Hello, everyone. Just wanted to give you a quick lab update as it relates to Repl, and just make sure that there's a couple changes, not too many, but there's some things that are a little different with the updated version of Repl. So as you go through the weeks 1 and 2 of the Repl, this is something that will help kind of explain where there's just a couple little nuances. But then after week 2, we'll be on the latest version of Repl. It just happens to be the hazards of software development and the ever-changing environments that we work with. And so Repl had recently undergone an update. So my lectures in the past have, even recent past here, have to be undergone some minor tweaks so that it stays relevant with the latest version of Repl that's out there. So that's kind of normal because software development environments are that we work with change over time pretty frequently. So this will just be a quick tune-up to get you up to speed on where the latest items are, but then also just as a reminder, going into week 3, we won't have to deal with this because I'll be laying down the Python version of this course, all in the new version of Repl. So you won't have to worry about where things are at and where to find things. Okay, so let me show you where things are at as it relates to differences between the past and what you're seeing now. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new Repl, and I'm just going to call this, I'm going to use HTML, CSS. This is just the first 2 weeks to get our programmatic flow going, just kind of real ease. Introduction into scientific programming before we jump into Python and get moving on that. So I'm just gonna just test is what I'm gonna create a new REPL that's in HTML CSS. And one of the big things that's a big difference between what you'll see in the prior versions, and I'm gonna remove all this here, and I'm just gonna have a blank HTML canvas. So pretty much most of this stuff is the same in terms of the layout. There's a couple of big, I'll go through 3 big changes, which is over on the left, these are the same. Index script, so these are still the same files that you'd see, the file location. You also have a spot in the middle for running your code, so that's still the same. And you have a web view output over here, and then you have shell. And so these are a little different than in the past. So this absolutely is the same. Like when you run your code, you'll get your hello world, your application output over here. But one of the things that will be different is the console output. It doesn't show up easily. It's not by default. In the past, the way it worked was you had a console that showed up in the lower right hand corner. It still does, but you actually have to hit this area, toggle developer tools. You have to hit this button, and then the console will show up right here. You'll have your console, elements, network resources, DOM, and then other settings that you can see here as it relates to our development environment. So the console, this is where you're going to see errors, warnings, and stuff like that. You can toggle it on and off. You can hit it again, and then it'll disappear. So you can kind of play with what you like and make it however you want. But as it relates to console errors, console outputs, log outputs, console to log outputs, those are all going to show up down here. Okay. So that takes care of that. The other thing that's a little different is in the lower left-hand corner over here. There's actually a new AI add-in that's like a helper for developing code. And that's something that you can pay for. You can try Ghostwriter, and that actually is something I encourage everyone to check it out. You probably have to get a little bit more experience under your belt to understand, not too much, but I think about halfway, once you get a feel for what code looks like, about halfway through the course, it's not bad, but you got to pay for it. And then it can actually greatly improve and speed up development and code development because you're essentially using ChatGPT to create code for you. It's a very helpful tool. I definitely encourage students to check it out. Again, you got to pay for it, But if you're willing to go that route, I don't discourage people from using it. But it kind of makes sense to have a little bit of coding experience under your belt before you start Ghostwriter. Another thing that's a little different here is the tools. So the tools, Ghostwriter, deployments, docs, packages, these are add-on packages. We'll explore a lot of this. This is actually something that again, you have to get a little bit more familiarization with the IDE, and then as we develop more code, these will eventually come into more use. For example, Git, there's an integration for GitHub. It's always been there for the longest I can remember, but there's an actual option now that streamlines the GitHub experience for version control of your code and publishing your code for the world to be able to see. You do have a copy of your code online here in the Repl account that you create, so that's totally fine, easy. This is a great way to save your code and keep a copy of it for review. You can actually publish through Repl as well. You can make stuff externally available for others to see and view, so that's not too terrible as well. Let me rephrase that. That is not too terrible of an alternative to GitHub. So GitHub, definitely you want to have some experience with it, but again, it's not. These are just options. Don't worry. We want to focus on the coding right now. Just know that tools and tools for software development are there and available for you, and they're over here in the lower left hand corner, which is a little different than the way Repl was set up in the past, and the way you had to look and search for packages and integration of tools. So it's a lot more robust than it used to be. There's a lot more flexibility in the environment, so I'm pretty excited about the new changes that they've made. So with that said, I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to actually create a real simple program, and it's just kind of circle back on what we've done already in weeks 1 and weeks 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write out a quick HTML document and just record this. We're going to put a body tag in here, and then within that body tag, I'm going to create an H1 tag, and I'm just going to call this variables and console, and then just give it a heading, new Repl system, and then we're going to call this, I'm going to create a data tag, so I'm going to create a P and call ID equal to data1, and then we'll close the P out. And so this will be a spot in the HTML area, in the HTML web page, for us to just place just to make sure everything's working and make sure it's got a spot for what it is that we're building out for this particular exercise. Because I just want to show you the differences and of course illustrating the differences and where everything's at. So this is probably what you're seeing in your labs right now, is this view right here. And then I'm going to pull this down, pull this over, and then this is kind of what you're looking at in your labs. Okay, so we'll do P, and then I'm actually going to do a block comment. Remember, these are JavaScript block comments, and then we'll just create a simple print system function. And this is something we've actually already created, it's a button that we create within our labs, and you don't have to always do this, but again, I'm just putting this together for the illustration of the lab for the additional lab here. Okay, so let me get the form taken care of. We're going to put an input in, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about this also. Equal to button value equal to print this page, and we'll use an onClick function, and onClick, and then we're going to do a window.print. That's the function, and then we're going to close the input out. Input, and then I think that's going to just about cover it. I'll just double check, make sure I'm good. On click equal to window.print, and that looks good. We're closing the input out. Yep. Whoops. I just want to make sure we're good here. All right. And then form is closed out. And then let's just go ahead and run this real quick. So we have a print this page. And then we've got a, looks like we've got a little bit of a, something we have to take care of here. And we'll, because we don't have our H1 heading here real quick. So what is going on with that? Body, HTML, form. All looks good. Okay, I think, okay, one thing I spotted here. Okay, so that's the one thing here. I had an extra less than sign in the tag, and that fixes that. So that's one thing when you're working with HTML. You have to make sure that the tags, of course, are proper, and I had an extra tag, less than sign, and you'll actually see over here when these both highlight blue, that means it's correct, and when it's like this and this one's white, it means that it's not correct. And that's kind of smart that, you know, when you're working with interactive development environments like this, or what we call IDEs, they have little helper functions like that to help you debug the code. So now it should be fixed. And let's go ahead and run this again, and then our H, there we go. So our setting now works. And we can actually test this form to see if this input is working as intended. So that's something that we'll double check and make sure that this form type works. And I believe we're going to work, and then I think, yeah, this all looks good. I'm going to print the test page. The function is actually calling correctly, but from a perspective of programming, I spotted another error. So I didn't close this out here on this input. So you notice again, this is a little debugging feature. These inputs should both be blue. So H1 and H1, that means that is a code segment. P and P is blue, that means it's a complete code segment and that's working. Form to form means that this is a complete code segment within the form tag, but the problem is I have an incomplete code segment between input and input because these actually, one is blue and one is white. And that means that I do have a little typo, but it did work. Sometimes those come work and get through, but let's fix that. So for this to fix, if I have a less than, I need also a greater than over here to close it out there. So I was missing, in other words, I have a less than, I need a greater than on the other side. This had a less than, but no greater than. See, an associated greater than didn't exist. So that was what was causing that issue. Okay, so that cleans that up. It won't really materially change anything over here, but we want to have good code, so that's the reason why we do that. Okay, so let's go to script. Within the form, we're going to create a script tag. Yep, and then I'm going to do this, and then that's going to clean that up. And then within this is where we're going to create our variables. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I think everyone has done a little bit of this already. So I'm just going to create a couple variables and then do a console log output, and then we'll test this all out, and then show you the differences here. So we'll do a var a equal to 10, and then we'll do a these are variable. Let's just call this variable section. And then remember the differences between, we're working with two different programming languages at the same time here. We're using HTML, which uses this for comment structure, and then we're using JavaScript. JavaScript occurs in between the script tags, and we're going to be using, this is a comment comment for JavaScript. So that's just the big difference there. Okay, so then we're going to do var b equal to 20, and again, this is just for simple illustrative purposes to show the differences between everything here. So we're going to do a console test, and we're going to just make sure that everything works. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, and on this console test, we're going to be doing console.log, and we'll do just test. So, and what's going to happen is what I'm doing is I'm using what's called the console function. This is console. There we go. And just make sure that that looks right. Console.log, and we're going to run this. And this is this is an object. So this is a class, and then this is a method within this class. So I don't want to get too into the weeds, but as you understand more about what object-oriented programming design principles are, these are this is just an intro. So don't worry about getting quizzed on this or anything like that. But you can actually go out and Wikipedia object-oriented design and or principles. That all works. And you'll find a bunch of good stuff out here as it relates to object-oriented design. And then we could do this for JavaScript. And there's a lot of information out here related to object-oriented programming in JavaScript. So, and this talks about objects, an instance of a class here. And what we're talking about is class methods. And then this gets you kind of in the idea, in the mode of understanding how objects are created in programming, and how objects, we have classes, and classes have methods associated with those classes, and they allow us through that characteristic to create functions to do certain things for us in code. And it's a way to help organize things. It's an easier way to think about things. So in other words, there's a bucket called console, and that's a class. And then there's a method within that console called log. And the way you can test to see this is if I say console dot, and you can see here there's different methods under that class structure. So if there was, I don't know if it'll pop up again here. I've got a window, I've got console, I've got log. I can do console.console, and that opens up a whole nother set of methods. Console.log, that's the one that we're working with. There's also console.print and console window. So we're going to just do console log, which means log the output. I'm using a function, which in this case is a method of console to print a print test string to console. That's what we're doing. So I'm putting I'm annotating this a little bit more so you understand what we're doing. So I'm going to run this, and then of course this is the difference between the way old Repl works and the way new Repl works. The console doesn't automatically show up. You have to hit this toggle. You have to toggle the developer tools. So I'm going to toggle this up, and then boom, there we go. We got console, and it shows our test. Our test string. I can change this to ABC, and then I can say ABC like this, and I can run it again, and then this is going to show ABC. Once I've toggled this, it's going to stay that way. You don't have to retoggle the console screen. So there you go. That takes care of that. That's where the console is at, and then I'm actually going to show you a couple more things just since while we're here rather. I'm going to do a console.log, and then I'm going to do var. Let's just keep going with this a, and then console log var b. And what this is going to do is I hard coded this string ABC as a log output. So that's why I have ABC in the console log output. But I can also pass the variable section here. I can pass this variable 10 to this var A, and then the same thing for var B down here. And then we're just testing it out just to make sure. So now we should see ABC 10 and 20. And that's exactly what we see. So that works. Everything's fine. Okay. So the last thing I want to do is we created a data one up here, an ID. Let's pop something into that. I'm going to create another variable, and this is just, again, just to double check. We're going to do a simple string variable test. And what we're going to do is create another variable called var car, a car variable equal to, we'll just say Ford. And then what we're going to do is document. We're going to access the HTML elements by get element by ID. And then we're going to call data one. That's the tag. Remember, that's how we access this up here. Data one dot enter HTML, and we're going to say car. So in other words, this variable car is going to get passed to this, the data, Ford, is going to get passed into the variable name car. That variable car is going to get passed here, and then that is going to then be passed into that. We're going to take this and access this whole function, this class library for JavaScript, which allows us to pass this data for car into data one as an HTML variable, and that HTML variable will get passed into data one up here. So in other words, we're going to see in console output, but then we're going to also see a web page output for Ford. Okay, so we're going to run this, and there we go, right there. Ford shows up. So there you go. That is everything as it relates to the latest adjustments, the big adjustments. There's other minor nuances, but these are the big ones. The shell is up here, which is a little different than the way it was before, but you can access the shell here, and we can we can run commands here. Just as an FYI, in the Repl environment, we're a Unix environment. So if we that may not work. Control C. Oh, it did. Okay. It's not installed. Okay. So that's okay. I was gonna do a Unix version just to double check what version we're on. And I think it's uname, username, uname. Oops, here, uname-r. Is that right? Okay, there you go. So I'm not exactly sure what version we're on. Linux. Of course, I'm not sure what Linux 5.19 GCP is. I'm not sure what flavor of Linux we're using here, but we are running on a Unix operating system. It's just light Unix here. So usually, depending on the build we're creating, it could be Ubuntu. It could be another, especially when we're running with other more advanced, different, depending on the languages we're working with, there might be different versions of an operating system that we're working with. So this is just some stuff to get to the command shell or the operating system command line. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind here. And ls just lists out the file. ls-l just lists it out in long form. So these are the files that are in over here. There's a hidden one, repl.nix, and we're actually not seeing that here in the file system. But that's okay. We're kind of getting into the weeds here a little bit. I just wanted to give you a feel for how to work with the command shell. Okay, so that's all I've got to show you for today. This has been fun, but what I'll do is going forward, I'm going to switch over to, we'll be doing the same environment, but we'll be working in Python. So that'll be kind of our language of choice going forward. So I'll get you, now that you've kind of gotten a feel for programming at a really high level, we'll start diving into Python and getting into the gritty parts of Python programming. And we'll start to integrate a little bit of machine learning, high level, very, very high level. Kind of get you into a flow of what Python looks like, and then we'll start running through the syllabus. I appreciate it. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next learning activities.